Welcome to Locked On Lakers for a Tuesday. Andy Kamenetzky and special guest Aaron Larsuel. Aaron is often inside the actual walls of the Lakers HQ in El Segundo. We'll get that perspective coming up. Locked On Lakers.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thanks for making Locked On Lakers your first listen every day, Monday through Friday, wherever you get your podcasts, always free, never behind a paywall. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you go to hang out with a community of 25,000 subscribers. We just passed 25K. Very excited. Thank you all very much for listening, for telling your friends, all sorts of stuff. It's a great community of smart, engaged, passionate, and even respectful Laker fans. And I know the internet is typically a cesspool, but not our community. I know it's a rare place, Aaron Larsuel. We use the comments and the questions that you guys leave on the show page all the time for part of our show. So leave your thoughts. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as the playoffs wind down and the sports stop sportsing the way we want them to. This summer, FanDuel will hook up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. My brother Brian is out of town this week, so in his place, we are bringing in one of our favorites that for whatever reason, Aaron lately, well, you are, man, but here's the problem. Okay. I mean, you're my dude, but for whatever reason, you've been on when typically I've been out of town, and I wanted to have you. I wanted to have you on, so we're fixing it right now.
You know, I think the pandemic is the only time during your show where I've been on with both of the Kamenetzky boys. So
I know
this is quite the treat.
It's kind of silly that it's taken this long, but Aaron, for those who do not know, works as a consultant with the Lakers, so he is very privy to the inner workings of the organization. And I know later on the show, I want to get your take on the roster itself as it currently stands. It's essentially last year's roster. But before then, like we talked about, you work with the Lakers. You've worked with other teams as well. So you have a really good idea of how things happen inside front offices. And there's been a lot of focus, whether from fans or NBA media, Lakers media, about it being a disappointing offseason for the Lakers. It's been slow without necessarily even talking specifically about the Lakers themselves. Broadly speaking, how complicated is it just to make trades happen typically? Like, what's the ratio of trade talks that die on the vine but are just happening versus trades that actually happen?
Well, so here's I guess the thing that maybe some know and some don't know is that there are conversations constantly happening all the time. So to answer the question about the ratio of trades that die on the vine, it's about 99.99999%, which is also why it's kind of, I mean, it's semantics, but it's ridiculous when I'm not going to pick on Woj or Shams, but Woj or Shams or whoever your favorite insider says, you know, so-and-so has had discussions about, you know, what player X. I mean, there's maybe like 4 or 5 players in the league that are not being discussed. LeBron was one of them, and now he has a no trade clause, so he put that aside anyway. But until there was the thing about, you know, last season when the Warriors inquired about him. Otherwise, other than like him, Steph, probably Wemby at this point, like everybody,
Jokic.
Yeah, like everybody's in discussions or trade talks. But to answer the question about how complicated it is, it kind of depends, and it's becoming more complicated now because, frankly, I don't think that, I mean, fans don't know at all. Media members know a little bit, but some more than others. But there is still some confusion in the NBA itself about what impact the new CBA is going to have in the second apron provisions and punishments. So it's more complicated now than it's ever been. You know, with matching salary stuff and how long you're in the second apron and whatever you do, you know, a signing trade is now going to cap you at the first apron, all these kind of things. So, I mean, there was a cap before for signing trades, but, you know, aggregating players, not being able to aggregate players, if, depending on which apron you're in, not being able to combine multiple minimum salary guys. So, I mean, to be frank, there is still, I don't want to say confusion in the NBA, but there's still some hesitancy around the league among team personnel about what all of these measures are going to mean. So it is more complicated now than it has ever been.
Well, that leads well into the next thing I wanted to ask you is, like, because it's been a quiet Lakers offseason, but I actually think across the league compared to past off seasons, it's actually been a pretty quiet period. Like, I don't think it's been a particularly active offseason as a whole. Mm-hmm. How do you think, though, that factor of the new CBA is leading some teams to be hesitant just because they want to get an idea of how the landscape is actually going to operate moving forward before they make a lot of commitments one way or the other?
So I think it's two things. I think that is one of the things. And we saw last offseason and then at the last trade deadline, there was some pretty good movement. And that was because the second apron penalties didn't start until this league year, which started at the beginning of this month. So I do think that's part of it. I think the other part of it is this was widely considered not a very popular draft. And, when people identify somebody that they want in a draft, that also can engender a bunch of movement. And because there weren't a ton of those guys in this draft, I think that and the second apron fear has caused some of the inactivity around the league.
The contracts that are seen as the most quote unquote tradable that they have are also some of their best players, which I think makes it harder to make moves that will actually improve them. Depending on how many of those guys they have to surrender to match salaries for player X, I think it can be hard to avoid what might be lateral moves. The Lakers are a team right now that feel like they might be more than one move away. I don't know if they have enough to do everything that they need to do. So they got to boil it down to probably one big move or one substantive move, even if it's for a high-end role player. That will probably take up a lot of their assets. So it's a tricky place for Pelinka to be in right now.
Yeah, so the other part of it that is the other complicating factor as it relates to the Lakers itself, well, there's a few of them. One, because all of the guys opted in to their minimums, there are no roster spots available currently. Now, I mean, that's sort of a red herring. That's only partially true because during the offseason, you can have, I think, up to 20 guys on the roster. Then you have to cut down to 17 at some point, and then it's 15, once you go into the season. So that's a little bit of a red herring, but it is like there isn't a roster spot. Like, fine, you can house more guys during the summer, but that's not going to help when going to sign somebody who is wanting to play. So that is one issue. The other kind of complicating factor, and you alluded to this just a second ago, is that the Lakers, I mean, it's a sort of a good problem to have, but kind of a complicating factor is the Lakers don't have any just like awful dumpable salary. All of the guys that the Lakers have are useful, right? And for a team that's trying to win, all of like the mid salary guys that, are worthwhile in trade that you would need to go get something of value back that could help you are guys that are, rotation guys for the Lakers. So that's part of the complication. But the other part of it is usually these salary dump trades are going to awful teams. Sometimes they'll have salary cap space, or they're just awful and will take in, contracts, bad contracts for money. The problem is because this draft is so good, those teams don't want to be good, right? So D'Lo, for example, right? If the Lakers were going to trade D'Lo, it doesn't have to be D'Lo, but D'Lo or Gabe, whoever, Austin, it doesn't matter. Those guys are too good to help tanking teams that want to tank be bad.
Yep.
Especially during the regular season. Like D'Lo has some complications during the playoffs at times defensively.
But these bad teams aren't thinking about the playoffs.
Right.
They don't even want to. They don't want to be in the playoffs.
Correct. They're trying to win 11 games next year, so they can go draft. I mean, Cooper Flagg is at the top of the list for a lot of people, but I mean, it's a very talented draft next year. So that can be a complicating factor too, is a lot of the guys that the Lakers have that those mid-salary guys that would be used to acquire somebody are too good during the regular season, at least for these teams that are trying to be bad.
All right. I also want to talk to you coming up next about player development, which is a phrase that has been linked a lot lately to the Lakers and is not something often talked about with this franchise. So get your take on that coming up next. Locked on Lakers is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. It's what brings home the winning trophy. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, style, or all of the above, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what it is you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or get your money back. With eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. And with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day, but you got to turn the sound down because the volume, all that shouting, it's awful? Well, make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. All right, so we've been hearing a lot, Aaron, about player development. It's something that Rob Pelinka's talked about. It's something that JJ Redick has talked about. Just the idea of putting more of that emphasis on player development. It's coming at a time where they use their first round pick that a lot of people thought might be getting moved before the draft on Dalton Knecht, who, what it's worth, I thought looked pretty good in Summer League. Obviously, they drafted Bronny. The jury is still very, very open for a variety of reasons on Jalen Hood-Schifino, but even seen like Austin Reeves, Rui Hachimura, Vando, Max Christie getting talked about as part of a young core. From your perspective, how do you see the Lakers as defining player development and what it means to them? Because I've got my own thoughts on what it means to me, but I'm curious about what you think it means to them.
So I think it's one of the ways that you can win on the margins, right? It's one of the ways that doesn't count against the salary cap. And I think it's a kind of a two-pronged thing. The Lakers have been really good in the past, 8 or 10 years or so, of identifying undervalued players in the marketplace, whether that's undrafted, whether that's late first round, whether that's second round. The Lakers have been really good at identifying and acquiring those players. The second half of that is developing those players into something, whether that's an asset to send out and trade, a cheaper asset. Usually those guys are less expensive because they don't have the first round commitments in the contracts, or, they were two-way guys for a while, like AC, or, they're undrafted, so you can sign them for a while, especially now there's the second round rule where you don't have to use your full mid-level to give your second round picks third and fourth years, which was the case with Austin, which was the case with Max Christie. But, the Lakers have gotten Zubac in the second round and Josh Hart and Kuz late first round picks. So I think the second half of that is developing those guys into players / assets. So I think it's kind of in conjunction, hand in hand with with Jesse and Joey Buss in identifying it. It goes along with trying to put a program together in the G League. Dane Johnson, who is the G League coach, coached the Summer League. So I think it's kind of a cohesive thing where it all works together to, really, like in a salary cap league, you have to find ways that are less expensive to get assets. And so I think that is a really important factor here. And, it's been in the past, it has been a lot of, frankly, Phil Handy. He's the best player development guy in the world, but it hasn't, I think it is now a bigger picture, kind of more overarching vision, as opposed to like, Phil's the best in the world, he'll get these dudes right.
Okay, it's interesting that you say overarching, because to me, the way I think about player development, and specifically the way I have not thought about it with the Lakers, is the idea of player development with investment in mind. Like actually thinking about whichever young player is getting developed as a Laker first, as opposed to somebody that's getting polished up with the goal of eventually flipping them for somebody readier. And like, I don't mean it like Dalton Connect has to be thought of right now as an untouchable lifer in the making. Like that would be obviously ridiculous. And guys get traded all the time. But like, if he's sincerely being thought about as part of a bigger picture in the way that in the moment, I never felt like they were thinking about Lonzo or Ingram or Randall or pick a member of the kids. It never felt to me like they were truly invested in them as Lakers. It felt like they were invested in them as, when are we going to move them? We need to get them looking good so they can eventually be flipped
as the guys as the guys that are attractive enough to New Orleans for Anthony Davis. Yeah.
And that's what I'm really curious to see moving forward. And obviously we're not going to know how it plays out for at least a few years, and context matters. But do you get a sense that they are thinking about this in terms of these could be our players, and like we need to develop them as Lakers as opposed to assets?
We'll put Bronny aside for a second, because I think obviously, you know, there's a lot to like. There's stuff to work with there with Bronny, but he needs to develop quite a bit. I anticipate him spending a bunch of time in the G League. But yeah, there's like raw material to work with Bronny. I think, to answer your question, I think it is, let's take Dalton specifically. Dalton, I know, is being thought of as a, like, let's see what we got with this guy, because you think, I mean, he's a little older as part of it too, but when you draft somebody, you basically have control over them for whatever, 7-8 years or so. And especially during that first 4 years, if you're a mid-round pick or a late first-round pick, it's, you know, a pretty favorably cost-controlled player, asset, whatever you want to call it. So as it relates to Dalton, I know he is being thought of as a, let's develop him because he is going to be a Laker for the foreseeable future. And I do agree with you that hasn't necessarily been the case previously, and that's also not necessarily a bad way of doing business. If you can build, you know, acquire and build up these guys so that you can later trade them and you can get something out of it, like Anthony Davis, which is why the Lakers won a title. Like, sure, great, but I do think there has been a shift in that regard.
Yeah, my issue isn't the idea that they wouldn't, or that they would be open to moving guys for somebody like AD. Obviously, that was a move that justified itself. My issue with the Lakers in the past has been, it's felt like they've never thought of it as a path. Like the idea of let's actually commit to some of these guys. It's not that they have to sign a blood oath, you know, towards young, you know, these young guys, like, you know, with a notary supervising it or something like that. It's just, it's felt to me often like they've cut off their own options in terms of long view planning and sustainability, because they've always thought of their younger players as really assets first, like flippable assets first, as opposed to something that could be foundational. And I really welcome the idea if they are becoming more expansive in that thinking. Yeah.
So I think, yes, I agree with that, but I think you can kind of see a shift with Austin.
Yeah.
Look, Austin, nobody in the NBA is untouchable, right? Like, nobody's untouchable. But the Lakers do not want to trade Austin Reeves. If the right offer comes along, like, Austin is the guy I'm probably closest with personally on the team now. You know, and I don't want to, you know, for the personal side, me and Austin's a damn good NBA basketball player too.
Yeah.
So I would be sad if Austin was traded, but if the right offer comes along, like, nobody's untouchable. But this buildup of Austin has been done with Austin being around long term in mind, and I think I don't think what you're saying is incorrect. I think the shift started a little before this new, you know, JJ and this new regime coming in.
All right. As far as development, Max Christie is somebody that they've shown signs of being committed towards development. Did not play last year. I want to ask you a little bit about him and also, too, some potential internal improvements on this team if the roster for the time being stayed more or less the same. So getting to that coming up next. Locked on Lakers is brought to you by FanDuel. We all love sports. We love them so much, we never want the sports to stop, but it's that time of year where you get fewer games and the sports aren't sportsing like we want them to, but FanDuel lets you, lets me, it lets everyone keep the sports going wherever you want, whenever you want. All you got to do is just open up the app, dream up bets anytime you're in the mood, and you got options, folks. You got baseball, you got the Olympics, you got the WNBA All-Star Game just wrapped over the weekend, and it featured some of the league's biggest names, Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese battling it out for Rookie of the Year. Asia Wilson, anybody going to stop her from winning a third MVP? Consider the odds, consider what's been happening, maybe lay down a little action. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. A quick update for those not in the loop. Spencer Dinwiddie has reportedly agreed to a 1-year deal with the Mavericks.
Playing behind Luka and Kyrie. As the rosters stand now, there's more of a role for him in Dallas.
We've talked before about, the problem the Lakers have. It's a double-edged problem where some of their more tradable contracts are some of their better players. Mm-hmm. It also, I think, affects the way players will view the Lakers as a destination, like in terms of where my opportunity comes from. Like, Gary Trent Jr., for example, who just signed with the Bucks. If you look at the players on that roster, point guard through small forward, just all the different player spots where either Trent would play or he'd be in some floor combinations with 1 through 3 in Milwaukee versus 1 through 3 in the Lakers. 1 through 3 in Milwaukee is not nearly as strong. Opportunity for Trent.
Malik Beasley just left, and he can walk into. I mean, look, it's also the East. The Bucks are a contender because it's the East, and he's going to be their starting 2-guard. Period. He's going to play 30 minutes a night. He's going to get the assignment of guarding the best opposition primary creator, and that just simply isn't the case with the Lakers, or wouldn't be the case with the Lakers. Much like the conversation we're having with Dinwiddie.
Yeah, I think that part of it gets sometimes overlooked. And
those guys, the minimum guys, it is almost exclusively about what your role is going to be, because minimum guys don't want to be minimum guys next.
Max Christie, he just got a contract with the Lakers that signals commitment.
One of the reasons Gary Trent Jr. would not get 30 minutes. Yes,
exactly. I bitched and moaned and complained a lot last season. Our everydayers heard me do it plenty about Christie not playing last year. I thought he should have been on the court more. Obviously, it's a fresh slate moving forward with JJ Redick and the commitment that he just got from the organization. From your perspective, what do you think was keeping him off the floor last year?
The coach.
That simple?
Yep.
Well, there's a problem out of the way.
Problem solved. No, look, I mean, there are no perfect players, and Max certainly isn't a perfect player. So there's more to it than that, but there's more nuance as there always is. There's more nuance than that. But was Darvin the problem in that regard? Yes. Was he the only problem? Maybe not, but he was the primary issue. Yeah.
Okay, then let me flip the question.
And if you're going to ask me why, I don't have a good answer for you.
He's also theoretically set up now for a much more defined regular role. What is it internally that you think they see in him and they like in him?
In the especially last year, but also in the year before, in the moments that he got on the floor, he's played pretty well. He's one of the Lakers' best shooters. He has decent size for the position. He's I wouldn't call him a big wing, but he's not going to be overwhelmed by, he's still got to get it stronger and bigger. But as far as his height and length, he can hold up against NBA wings. He is probably maybe Gabe, and Vando too in a different way. But he has shown to be a very competent point of attack defender. He can get bullied still a little bit off the ball, but as a point of attack defender, he's very competent, and you can always use those guys. And the commitment, I mean, he's getting $8 million a year average value. So what is that now? Like 6% of the salary cap or something, right? Like going forward. So yeah, I mean, I think it's not even really much of a gamble, but like insofar as
I agree.
A gamble, it's a good one to take.
Yeah.
Because those are the kind of players, like he's not a primary creator, but he is like an archetypal 3-and-D wing, and you can never have enough of those guys.
As far as looking at the roster as it stands right now and where internal improvements come from, I think Vando last year missing 53 games fundamentally changed the season. There was a big ripple effect from his absence, whether you're talking about some of the lineup decisions Darvin made or that I know frustrated the hell out of a lot of fans, but also too, like there's so much that Vando provides, perimeter defense, that defensive versatility, the rebounding. There's like an energy and an edge that he plays with that I don't think is replicated. Chaos. There's a chaos factor, and there's not a lot of that on the roster, much less in one person. Mm-hmm. How much do you think him just being back next year adds like a tangible dimension for what the Lakers can do? Like, am I overstating that?
No, I don't think I don't think you are. And one of the other reasons, there was a ripple effect. There was also kind of a compounding effect of the Lakers injuries last year. Like, Darvin kept saying, about how injured the Lakers were, and everybody, I mean, and look, internally, some people too, but every fans of all the other teams and media members are rolling their eyes because, LeBron and AD basically played the whole year. Yeah. Those are your guys. And they have not done that in quite some time individually either. But I think the compounding, you mentioned it, some of the things that Vando can do. He's a big on offense. He's one of the Lakers' bigger and more athletic players. But he's also probably the best, definitely against bigger primary ball handlers, against, the Luka types or Jason Tatum types. He is far and away the Lakers' best option to guard those guys. And even, chasing around screens, he's probably the Lakers' best at chasing around screens, and he was guarding Steph some, and, he's like very versatile. He's also, a primary on-ball defender. And I think the compounding effect of him being out and Gabe, those are your two best options as on-ball defenders. Okay, they're both gone for most of the year, like combined. Okay, so that puts, more stress on Austin in some matchups. D'Lo's going to have to take on some of that, which you don't necessarily want him to have to do at all. But then there was the other problem that Vando is also, a good rebounder, and one of the Lakers' bigger and more athletic guys. And then you compound that with the time that Rui was out, and then you're like, okay, those are your best two, like swing forward, athletic, big options. Rui's not a great rebounder, and then, Jackson Hayes is out, and then Christian Wood is out. So at some point you just start running out of options.
And Darvin refuses to play Max Christie, who can rebound.
Yeah, Max is a good rebounder for his size. So I think that Vando was like the first piece to unlock a bunch of different stuff. And then when you chip away with other injuries or other guys missing at times, Gabe, like, okay, now you're kind of out of point of attack defenders.
Yeah.
Max would probably be the next best, but that also forces LeBron into having to guard some smaller guys, some wing, threes, which he just frankly can't do full time anymore. No. So there is the ripple effect that you mentioned. I think there was a compounding effect, and that caused ripples that kind of broke the roster construction.
It's interesting too, for all the focus on Vando offensively, and he's obviously an imperfect offensive player. But for all the focus on the lack of outside shooting, I actually think the bigger problem with him is he's not as good of a finisher as he should be.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like because I don't expect him to make outside shots. And I think there are ways to work around that, particularly, last season, kind of quietly, the Lakers turned into a really good outside shooting team. Like by the time they entered the playoffs, by the time they entered the playoffs, 3-point shooting was not a problem for them. And I feel like there are ways that you can offset Vando's lack of shooting, like, using teams not guarding him to his advantage, his ability to cut, to crash, all that sort of stuff. But the finishing, I actually think, is more of a problem with him offensively, just because that is something that you could more reasonably want from him and expect from him, as opposed to the shooting.
So there's a debate around the NBA, and I think I know where I come down in it, but I'm not certain yet. But there's a debate around the NBA on if what I'm about to say, if this attribute, if it can be improved or not. Of course, there's like little things you can do around the margins at all times, but like fundamentally, if it can be improved. And I think it speaks to his finishing, because he's a great athlete. He's 6'8", 6'9". He's a big dude. He's pretty strong, and he's a great athlete, so he should naturally be a good finisher. He doesn't have great touch, but it's his hands. I think that is what gets him in trouble as a finisher, because a lot of times he won't catch the pass or the initial rebound, the offensive rebound cleanly. And so that extra, millisecond or half a second or whatever it is, where he has to kind of regather to then, by that time, the NBA is so fast and so athletic and so big. By that time, like the attempt isn't as open anymore, which hurts his finishing, which also you'll see him like pass out from directly under the basket a lot. And that is because by the time he corrals the ball fully, the defense has collapsed on it. And so there is a debate around the league, and has been for years, about whether your hands are something that can be like really materially improved. Yeah. And I don't know the answer.
It's funny. I remember Kobe, one of the all-time greats, who seemingly had everything you'd possibly want physically working for him, exceptional athlete, exceptional coordination, great size for his position, all that stuff. He used to lament all the time that his hands were too small. He I remember him talking about Shannon Brown's hand. Like, Shannon Brown's hands were enormous.
Yes.
Like, they were actually kind of too big for his, like, they were more like a
history, by the way.
Well,
that two-handed spike against it, what they called a foul, where he jumped over
weak. Like, they should Adam Silver should have a press conference where they retroactively announce
a full press conference. Yes,
that was not.
We're considering Seattle. We're considering Seattle, Vegas, and that Shannon Brown block is no longer a foul. So I don't know. I mean, I think that is part of it, and I don't know Vando's hand size, but there's a debate about whether or not, of course, you can make improvements in all areas of life, but whether that can fundamentally be changed. The other thing is, you were talking about Vando's lack of shooting and how costly that was in the playoffs. And he kind of got played off the floor.
I think I know where you're going with this, and I'm going to say right now, before you even make your statement, I agree with you.
All right,
make your statement.
So I've been beating this drum for a couple of years now, and the problem is, and I may have said this on your show a year or two ago, the problem was not that Vando can't shoot. Vando can't shoot.
It was the other guys not making shots.
Right.
Yes.
It is the collective on the floor couldn't shoot enough to offset the fact that it's not Vando specific. So I think it would have been instructive. And I don't know if LeBron can shoot this year as well as he did last year, but it would have. Anthony Davis is not put that aside. So when it's Anthony Davis and Vando and LeBron, as it was in the playoffs 2 years ago,
and D'Lo, and basically everyone,
then you got nothing. Right.
Basically, everyone couldn't make outside.
But if LeBron is going to take and make at the volume that he did and the efficiency that he did last year, I think that Vando problem kind of goes away.
Okay. One of us. Because I have been making this point for a while as well, that I actually I understand why Darvin started playing Vando less because he did become untenable. I'm not arguing with Darvin's decision.
Yeah, you're not going to take LeBron off the floor.
Right. I just think it was more of a problem with the other guys rather than Vando.
It's a collective problem, not a Vando problem.
Right.
Vando is the face of the problem because he's the most obvious culprit, but it's not a Vando problem. It is a 5-man unit problem.
Okay, we are going to end on this note of solidarity, also with, I hope, the promise of you returning again when I'm actually a part of this show. As always, man, appreciate the time. Love having you on, man. Thank you very much, brother. Aaron Larsuel, you can follow him on Twitter at Aaron, Aaron, Larsuel, Larsuel.
Yep.
Great basketball insights. He follows the entire league. Awesome stuff, man. Thank you very much.
It was my pleasure, and you know how to find me anytime you want.
Okay. Coming up on Wednesday, I believe it's going to be Dan Wojcicki from the LA Times, but either way, it will be somebody, and we will see everyone on Wednesday.